Greetings, or Rahubat, as we say in our language. My name is Sakamreye, from OSM Vision, Ask Us Anything. I'm here to speak to a brother about basically Wu-Sabat or anything he wants to ask me. I'm looking forward to having the one-to-one conversation. So welcome, brother. Introduce yourself and yeah, we can get into it.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, my name's Andre. Um, yeah, this has all come out of a bit of left field for me. Yeah, I'm kind of be interested to learn something today and see if I can. Well, yeah. I'm always interested in learning new things. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
Okay. Um, So do you have any questions? Because when we say ask us anything, we're literally going by what people want to know.
hmm
We are a culture known as Wu-Sabat,
hmm
or which is a way of life really, which comes from our ancestors as the original people on the planet Earth
hmm
and beyond. And so a lot of people have been given a westernized education, ideology, belief systems, and they've lost or forgotten who they really are as the original African people on the planet. Some people struggle with that term African, but it's just used in a way of a reference in relation to the other root races. So you'll have the Caucasian, and then you'll have like the Asians, and then the Africans. And it's
hmm
loosely known that Africans will deal with, people from the land or the place that people call Africa, even though we do know that it's had many names and Africa is just the most popularized one, but we know it was coined by other races as well, which actually relates to how it was separated and divided up, and the people made to feel like they're different people in different parts of the continent. But just turning this off. But we know that there are other names that predate that word Africa. But just to put it into context, so when we're saying Africans, we're not talking about the Asians or the Caucasians. And there's
hmm
obviously now those are referred to as the root races because there are mixtures of those three now where you have different people like mixing with the different root races to produce other hybrids or what we would refer to as sub races. So because we have been taught by our teacher. We refer to him as the master teacher. Many people know him as Dr. Malachi Z.K. York, and we know him as a incarnation of a being referred to as Yanun. Yeah. So he's the one that has taught us, and he has written over 1,000 books on every subject you can conceive. And so we are here as his students to help answer questions and to, especially to our people or of African descent,
hmm
to answer questions about who we really are, what our culture is, and what we should be doing and how we should be living, etc., away from how the colonizers have taught us based on, the different races on the planet. So we're basically reclaiming and going back to our original way of life, which is known as Wu-Sabat. So that's
Okay.
literally why we're here to answer questions on anything someone may want to know about our culture and so on. Yeah.
Okay. Um. Uh. I guess. Well, I guess to start. Um. I mean, I guess my direct lineage is from the Caribbean, and I did a DNA test. I want to say maybe like 10 years ago now, I think. And yeah, a lot of it was from Africa, predominantly West Africa. And there were some like small subsets as well, like Kenya was one. Um, there's a tribe in Kenya, I can't remember which one it is, that was part of it as well. Um, so yeah, but it's, even though I've also have African friends and whatnot, but I've never, yeah, I guess I've never learned much about African culture as a whole, really, I would say. So yeah, I'd probably say there's a lot of things I just don't know about or have an understanding of. Um, yeah, because I guess it's being from Caribbean, it's just not something you learn about really.
Right.
So,
When you say Caribbean, can you be a little bit more specific?
so mum's side is Barbados, dad's side is Saint Lucia.
Okay. It's interesting. When you say you have not really learned, what would you say the reason for that is? Why haven't you learned or know more about your
Um,
yourself, basically?
um, I don't know, I guess it's not really, yeah, I guess it's not really something I learned growing up from my parents and grandparents, really. It's
Okay.
more so as I've gotten older,
Yeah.
where I've kind of looked into things a bit more. More so, primarily ancient Egypt, really, because I just found it quite interesting.
Okay.
Um,
Because you went as far as doing a DNA test. That's kind of delving into wanting to know more or learn, isn't it? So
yeah,
you said that the findings were pointing to you being predominantly from Africa, which is not a coincidence because when you start to look into people that are in the Caribbean, a lot of the history will tell you that they were taken from Africa to the Caribbean, even
yeah,
though some don't want to make that connection or that link to accept that. Some people clearly say, I'm not African, but that's normally usually based on the ignorance of not doing any work or doing any research or finding out more, as you said, right? So when they do, and I'm actually sometimes quite surprised when people say that because some of the biggest music icons, stars, like Bob Marley, obviously Peter Tosh, even down to, you know, people like activists like Marcus Garvey, a lot of them taught and, you know, propagated that connection of Africa. You know, Bob Marley sang the song Africa Unite and trying to show, you know what I mean, the connection between the roots, as they say, is from Africa. Marcus Garvey was talking about going back to Africa. And as I said, many people that are known as prominent icons, musicians, entertainers speak about this. And when you start to do the research, you know, in terms of slavery, people will tell you that a lot of people that ended up in, say, Jamaica, in different parts of the Caribbean were from Africa. So sometimes I don't get it, but the point in Wu-Sabat that we try to, well, not try, but we teach people that you're not made up or it's not where you're located or where you're situated now. It's not where you're from because it's really, you don't identify that you're from a place, you see, even though most people have been kind of given that outlook to think that I'm from here, I'm from there, but those are just locations. What makes you who you are is really your DNA. That's why when I was saying about the root races, it is something that scientists, especially anthropologists, trying to figure out where humans came from and how did we evolve, and they have a keen interest on trying to find out. And now most fossils or excavations and things that have been dug up and tested and found now give a clearer picture of where people on the planet come from. And yes, no doubt that, like I said at the beginning, the original inhabitants began in Africa, and then people migrated or moved into other places based on natural kind of disasters or occurrences, or in the sense of colonization, where people were actually taken from one place to another. So yeah, so it's very clear now that anthropologists will tell you that Africans are, the Homo naledi and the Homo habilis, with all the things they find, Lucy, etc. That's all around Africa. And then you'll have like the Denisovan or the Homo florensis that is found in Asia, around mainly Asia, and the Neanderthal and the Cro-Magnon are found in Europe. Yeah, so they're different origins or beginnings of people, pointing to the fact that the biblical stories or the religious stories of everybody coming from one couple, Adam and Eve, is no longer able to hold weight. Yeah,
Yeah.
so there's so much that people don't know about who they are, both Africans, Caucasians, Asians, and we are now having to re-educate or bring the knowledge back to people of the true kind of facts about, yeah, basically anything people want to know. So that's why we do this, why we teach, and we teach from the one who knows, our teacher, and he has not been refuted in terms of the information that he's been putting out for years, over 50 years easily now, and published many books covering every subject you can possibly conceive or think of. So yeah, so that's why we're here. To any questions you have based on what I've said, or any kind of things that you've been thinking about. But yeah, so that wasn't really a question, but more a confirmation that your DNA has actually shown you, or proved that you're from Africa. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other thing I would say about DNA tests as well is that they're not always accurate or 100%, or that the people that are performing it are actually ethical or whatever. So there may be questions around that, but generally, DNA is something that is recognized now today as a science that helps in many, many fields and endeavors. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
I guess what else I was gonna ask? Um, I guess one thing that's kind of, because I've looked into, like, I've read different scriptures from, like, the Quran or Bible, um, and I guess as well, I guess thinking about stories from the Bible, but then reading other things, like I've read bits of the Emerald tablets before, and I guess one thing I've kind of noticed is that there is, I think there seems to be like strong ties to Africa, and how that knowledge has spread out around the world, like to, I'd probably say South America seemed like another big one. And yeah, and I guess maybe I just haven't looked into it enough. But I guess me trying to piece it all together in my mind to kind of gain a better understanding. And yeah, I just kind of haven't been able to. Um, 'Cause I think one thing I've kind of learned just from reading different things over the years is that, and this was a quote I read somewhere. I kind of paraphrasing a bit, whereas if you don't learn from your history, you're doomed to make the same mistakes. And another one being that all these things like that we're seeing now, it's things that has already been created, if that makes sense. And maybe we're just relearning it at a different time.
So when you say all these things that we're seeing, what are you referring to?
Um, I'll probably say human creations and inventions, and I guess as well just behaviors of society as well. Um, like in that empires rise, they fall. There might be a time where there's a lot more war or tensions building, but then there's times of peace and tranquility.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's I think looking in other things as well is how things always go in cycles. And I guess I've thought in the past, what stage are we at now in this current time, in the current cycle? And is it one where it's heading towards not the complete destruction of civilization, but maybe a bit of a downturn?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I mean, when you said, you've read some of the Emerald tablets, I mean, what got you there? What drove you to read the Emerald tablets, for example? And then I'll carry on from there in terms of to answer the question about the things that you've described as happening and where it's all going. What kind of got you to what is like for the people that have never heard of the Emerald tablets? Because you said you read some of the Bible, the Quran, and then the Emerald tablets specifically. So how did you get to that, or what kind of led you to the Emerald tablets?
Um, do you know what? I think it was a point where I was consuming so much information, and
From social media, or from just yourself having an interest to go out and just look for it, or
yeah, I think just having an interest,
okay,
like either just reading, watching YouTube videos,
okay,
and I found that I've always thought that since I was young. I think more as I've gotten older, I found that there are things in the Bible that don't make sense to me, and I think it was just something I came across one day where there are certain aspects of the Bible that have come from the Emerald tablets and things that have been.
do you remember or recall what parts of the Bible or that you're recalling that fit that description?
Um, not off the top of my head, no.
Okay,
I'll probably say from memory, probably creation
okay,
being one. Um, and yeah, and it's when I started reading it, and yeah, I found that some things were like the Emerald tablets. There are certain aspects of it where it's almost like an extended version of what you get in the Bible.
okay.
And just when I was reading it, it just
It kind of
the,
opens you up a bit more.
yeah,
Yeah,
and it just reading it, it made a lot more sense to me.
right. Okay, well, that's good that you've clarified that because a lot of people reading the Bible and the Quran and these religious books are completely unaware that they're not originals, that they plagiarized, and that these are stories from other stories, especially the stories of the Sumerians,
Yeah.
or what people talk about mainly now, the Anunnaki,
Yeah.
and Babylonian tablets, and these include things like the epics of Gilgamesh, the Enuma Elish, the Akkadian tablets, Atrahasis. There's so many tablets that have been uncovered, like you've mentioned, the Emerald tablets, which predate the Bible, Quran, and these religious books by thousands of years. And there are clear similarities, in fact, clear evidence that they've been grafted or taken from those older tablets or writings. So when somebody is under the what we call the spell of religion, they don't they're given a story that this is the words of God or Allah, or what I mean, this comes directly from him, and then they're given this vision of God or Allah or the gods of monotheistic religions, that they're perfect, they know everything, they don't make mistakes, they have complete authority. But then when you start to read the text, as you say, it's not making sense in a lot of instances. And so when you read the older texts that have been uncovered, like you say, you get the eureka moment, like you've been lied to. You've been given, an outlook of life, beginning with creation, stories, and humanity and God, basically, and how he's the one that created everything and everyone, and everyone's accountable to him. And if he's not pleased with you, you're going to be punished and go to a place called hell. If he's pleased with you, you're going to go to a place called heaven. So people, and you're actually encouraged not to question anything. So you can't use your mind to try and dissect things that are not making sense. And when you start to, you either get shunned and like made to feel like there's something wrong with you, as opposed to you using and exercising your mind to try and make sense of stuff that's not making sense. But when you read these ancient tablets, you start to see like, oh, the creation story didn't go the way you're taught in the Bible and the Quran. Your floods, the destruction of humanity and stuff like that. It's not the first time there was a flood. Then you go into, like the Sumerian text, you hear about a person called Utnapishtim, who the flood story is taken from. You go into like ancient Egypt. You start to see that the things that predate the Bible, writings and cultures and everything that you were kind of taught didn't exist, but it does, and there's actual evidence. Yeah,
Yeah.
so then it opens your mind up to wanting to know more. And I think today there's been so much exposure now of those lies, of those fictional stories, etc. That if you want to know the truth, yeah, you have to be open-minded enough to want to learn and investigate and research and check things out for yourself. And I think that's where it will bring you to what you were saying about the cycles, and that things have been happening in cycles for many, many years. And then you start to learn about like the 24,000 year cycle,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
broken up into 6,000 years smaller cycles. And this is referred to as the equinox. And then it starts again. And these cycles have been going on for millennium, for millions and millions of years. And during the last 6,000 year cycle is where the birth of religion in the way it's practiced today, the stories of, you know what I mean, like the Bible, the Quran, and these books only came into existence around about 6,000 years ago. But scientifically, when you're studying archaeology and studying anthropology and studying, you know, creation and fossils and things like that, they go back millions of years. So in your mind, you're kind of like, this is not making sense. There's a clear contradiction because you're telling me the God of the Bible, the Quran, just went, let there be light and let there be this and let there be that. And he did all of that in 6 days and then rested on the seventh day. And it's like, it's only 7 days, but you know that things evolve and take millions of years to evolve. So it couldn't have been everything done in 7 days. And
Yeah.
so now you have more questions. So the more answers you get from the things that don't make sense in the religious world, the more questions you get. And it just keeps going. And then you realize that there's so much more information to learn and to recognize who and what God isn't, you see. And then, yeah, it leads you on a journey where we're now going back to the question of, are we going down the path of destruction? Yes, we are, based on misinformation that the last 6,000 years has caused based on the beings that were grafted and created 6,000 years ago, known as the Adamites. The Adamites is plural, but in the Bible it becomes one person known as Adam. You see, that's where the disjoint comes in, because once you start to go, well, who are these Adamites? How were they created? Then you go into the stories of the, like I said, the Sumerians and the fact that a being was grafted by these extraterrestrial beings that came here from somewhere else. And their genetics were included in this new hybrid creation that took what was already here, evolving naturally, to produce a being out of necessity for them to work and be slaves for them. And so these Anunnakis came here and they took beings that were already evolving, injected their DNA, created a hybrid, and other beings then started to come here as well from different planets, from different star systems, and they've been coming and going for millions of years. But it's then communicated to you by way of the Bible as these beings are gods and angels that are in a place called heaven, and you get stuck there because they don't explore, you know, the different star systems that are actually mentioned in the Bible, and they don't look at them as extraterrestrial beings, you see. So they give you this clinical image of, you know, God is in heaven, the angels are around him, he sends people to come to earth, like, you know, prophets and angels, but they don't go into the detail. How do they travel? Where is this place called heaven? What do they do there? And can someone go there and come back? And, you know, the practical questions that you will have about the details. And that's why we're here, because in the Bible, it will tell you about, you know, these constellations that I'm calling star systems, like Pleiades, Orion, Sirius, Andromeda, Sirius A, B, and C, and so many more that, yeah, it's mentioned in the Bible, but they don't go into the detail. Creation is mentioned in the Bible, but they don't go into the detail. God is mentioned in the Bible, but they don't go into the detail. Angels are mentioned in the Bible, but they don't go into the detail. A place called hell is mentioned, but they don't go into the details. So people are just left in a position of faith and belief. Just accept what we say and rely on us. Then you have like the people that are leading congregations, you know, imams, priests, popes, do you know what I mean? And they don't know, and they're leading people the wrong way, and they don't have answers for the questions that average normal person has. So we have to answer those questions to make things clear for people so they're not confused, because what that creates is chaos. It creates belief systems. It creates competition where people are fighting against each other, trying to represent their gods. And their God is telling them, you're the chosen people. You know, you're the ones that are special. Everybody else isn't. So if you have different groups thinking and feeling that way, then it's going to be conflict, because the wars that you see around the world and the planet come out of people fighting for territories, fighting to control others, fighting to take resources off of people. And so, yeah, it's just got to a stage where we're coming to something called it started in the year 2000, the Aquarian age, as most people know it by, which is a new cycle of 24,000 years where changes have to take place. And part of that change is the truth to be made known to everyone clearly. And then from that truth, you decide on the actions to take. And not everyone has been prepared or ready for the truth of these things that we've been talking about for many, many years by way of the teachings of Parnabab Yanun. So these changes are catching some people off guard, because with the exposure of extraterrestrials, UFOs, other beings coming from different star systems, and so on and so forth, tablets and things that are uncovered or rediscovered, and more information about beings that existed and lived way before the Bible. All of this is coming out, and for some people, they've been able to embrace it. They're willing to learn and adapt and change and evolve. For others, it's a complete shock to their system, and they can't accept it. They don't want to accept it, and unfortunately, they're not going to evolve, and they're going to be left behind with the changes that are taking place. But I'm
Yeah.
happy to go into more detail on anything I say that you may have a question on or want further clarity. But you're right, this change is taking place. People call it a dimensional shift, a conscious shift, the Aquarian age from the Piscean age, the new 24,000 year cycle, the golden cycle. There's so many, the Christ consciousness, people waking up now and realizing there's more to life. And to navigate all of that, you have a lot of content online on social media, and everyone is giving you their take on it. But you have to remember there's always a source of the information, and then it gets diluted or mistranslated or distorted or whatever as it goes out to the masses, and everyone trying to claim it for themselves. But we know that our teacher is the really most authentic source of the information that many people haven't even attempted to address or like touch, or even make themselves available to be questioned on what they teach and what they claim. And when you do, it's easy to see who's telling the truth and who's lying, or who has the actual facts, the information that is required in this day and time. And unfortunately, there isn't anyone else really out there but our teacher. And if they are, if you follow their evolution and the source of the information, it's going to lead you right back to him anyway. So, you know, and he always said it doesn't matter as long as the information gets out. But
Yeah.
who is there to keep going and taking it to a point of clarity that anyone can benefit from listening to it, applying it, whatever. So, yeah, that's why we're here as his students, to help people get to that point.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Do you know what? I'm I'm glad you brought up the Anunnaki because that's something I've been. I guess the more I've looked into it, the
Mm.
more I understand it.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess there was one point where, because I used to think that the cultures that have multiple gods, I think I got to a point where I thought that it was more of an idea or like a spirit, like the essence of it, not necessarily an actual being or a person. And I think after reading about the Anunnaki and who they were, some of the things they did, I guess I kind of started to wonder if, yeah, maybe they were actual people in a way, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah,
I'm a lot of the times I'm waiting to see if there's a question that you have because you're saying things and there are, I can even hear conflict or doubt in your mind as you're saying it, as in,
yeah.
were they people, were they not people? So if that's a question, I will answer that, say they were people. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
why are you struggling to think if there were more than one gods or if there were people or not people? What is it that makes you think otherwise?
Um, in all honesty, I think it can be hard to wrap your head around it. Um,
You wrap your head around.
if they were real people or not. Well, I think probably because of the time we live in, and I was reading about,
Okay,
so,
let me ask you a question. If there were not people,
yeah.
what would they be? Or what do you, in your mind, when you're saying that, you're saying it's hard to wrap your head around whether there were people, but I'm trying to say why, and if not, what does come to your mind then to say that, well, what were they?
That's the thing. I don't really know because yeah, like I said, there was a point where I just thought it was of it as more of an essence of a thing, not
Okay,
necessarily an
but
actual
the
tangible thing.
Bible, in terms of God,
Mhm.
how did you view God?
I've never viewed God as a person. To me, it was always just, I guess, not a thought, but something that a
Okay,
spirit, I guess, that kind of governs us all in intrinsically, in a way.
but, yeah, but the thing is, whatever topic you're referring to or talking about, there's knowledge surrounding it. Like that information had to come from somewhere. So
Mhm.
if people are saying they're religious and they're reading religious books and then are kind of like dismissing what the book is saying, then it's
Mhm.
like that means you don't subscribe to the book then, because in the book it tells you like God is everything you hear or see that's written about God points to him being a person. Like he
Mhm.
walks, he talks, he grieves, he's jealous, he destroys things because he gets angry, he punishes people. Like all of that is pointing to a humanoid. So you can't actually think of him as anything else because he sits down, he sits on the throne. Do you know what I mean? So he has angels around him, and these angels they wear clothes, white robes. So people have this idea that when you start to point out that God or Allah or any of these beings are acting and behaving like a human being,
Mhm.
and if they don't want to accept that, then they make him into a spiritual thing, or do you know what I mean, like essence, or they start to describe things where if I say to them, "Tell me where it says that in the book," they can't. You see what I mean? Because
Yeah.
it's now your mind trying to make it make sense to take it away from it being a humanoid or a human being, a hominid, right? So I'm saying that when you then bring it to the Anunnakis, they're also referred to as gods, Sumerian gods. You go to ancient Egypt, they're referred to as gods, but they're people that are walking, talking, having children, have families, have conflicts. So what it is there's a disconnect because the religious world tries to make you think that they're not human beings. They're some entity that you can't relate to. But then I can show you in the Bible where God is walking, God is talking, God is sitting down, God is eating, God is laughing, God is crying, God is angry. God, it's everything. People see this God in one sense, and in another place they say you can't see him. There's so much contradiction. So I'm saying that's because people don't realize or know that these are extraterrestrial beings. That's why when you start to read these books, you're confused because they're making mistakes. They're doing things like they have emotions. So people kind of like try to then make excuses when you point it out. Like, why does God make mistakes? If you're telling me he knows everything and he created everything, why does he make mistakes? Because people will say the evil on the planet or in the world comes from another entity that they give called the devil or shaitan or, you know what I mean, whatever name they want to use. But they say, when I say, okay, who created that entity? They say, God did. Then you say, well, why does God allow him to make all of these, you know what I mean, mistakes and all these things on the planet? Then they can't answer the question. Then they will say, well, he was once an angel that went bad. Then you say, but did God not know he was going to go bad? Did he not preempt this as knowing everything? Or did he make a mistake to make him go bad? Then because they can't answer these types of questions, they will say, well, they make excuses. They start being the God to speak for God and say, oh, he gave you will. And will is so you can decide to do anything. Then you go, okay, let's follow that trend of thought. He makes you decide, but then you have to choose what he wants you to choose, which is not you deciding. Because if you choose to do things other than what he accepts as being good, you get punished. So you really don't have a choice. Because if you choose to not believe in him or choose to do wickedness, you get punished for that. So there's a consequence for you choosing to do other than what he wants you to choose. So as we keep going, this is why you see that God's making mistakes, because it's not your concept of what you think a God is. It's like someone who's loving, caring, knows everything, is in control, can maintain order, can defend you, defend everything. He's your savior. All of those things he's supposed to be able to do. But the problem is the westernized or the European or the monotheistic concept of God is telling you that God is those things, but in reality he's not. So you get confused because you're like, he makes mistakes, but he's not supposed to make mistakes. He's got emotions that are human emotions, but he's not supposed to have emotions because he doesn't have a need. Why does he need anything? If the people, oh, he needs you to love him. Why? Is he emotionally unstable? Because to need something from someone else, it means you're relying on that person or something. So you're not capable of providing that for yourself. So what I'm basically saying is in our ancient culture of Wu-Sabat, in our ancestors' way of thinking with intelligence, they knew what God was and what God isn't. God was us or is us. And we are beings that recognize how to live and how to do things intelligently, but other beings that are lesser in terms of their way of doing things came along because they were grafted and they were made as a hybrid and now had to receive instructions and been taught what to do and what not to do. So these instructions, like the Bible, basic, information before you leave Earth, it's an acronym for the Bible, was given to them by us, but then over time, we forgot who we were because the same beings managed to, with the assistance of other extraterrestrial beings who were responsible for their creation, made you to think that you are not who you are. So the whole concept of you being a god and a goddess got diluted and distorted to you looking at other races who created God in their image and their likeness to make you feel inferior, to think they are more superior than you. And now it's all being exposed. And you're learning that these same beings were the ones that were created 6,000 years ago. And then today, people are following these books and these religions and based on these hybrids that are now at their expiration time. The Adamites, they were only given a specific amount of time to exist, which was 6,000 years, which has come to an end, and it came to an end in the year 2000. So now you have to renew your history, renew your stories, renew everything you ever were taught that didn't make sense. And when you get the actual accurate, correct information, it will make sense. And then you start to behave and act and put it together in a way that's going to help your life and be more progressive. Yeah, so the Anunnaki were people. They came from, a different star system on a craft called Nibiru, and their ruler was Anu. He had two sons, Enlil and Enki, and other children, but the two of them were in conflict with each other and they were warring. And the reason they came here in the first place was because they were looking for gold to help repair their star system, which was dying out because of the ozone layer being depleted, and they needed a shield. And they recognized that gold was one of the best things to use, because gold can be made into gold dust, be made very thin as paper, to basically reflect the suns from damaging their planet, which is why they had to leave to kind of come and find this resource. And then they found the work too difficult to do in an atmosphere that they weren't used to. So they said, okay, we're going to create a being to do the work for us. And when you start to read these tablets and read it in the language, you get the word Lulu or Milu, which is a primitive worker. So they basically had to graft a being to use tools, so they had to get certain intelligence. And it was over a period of time, because when you deal with genetic engineering and, graftations, you keep evolving it until you get it right. And then obviously then you had another set of beings from different star systems, like the Pleiadians, who came here as well. And there was a different reason for why they came, and why they went about creating these beings we know as the Adamites. And they were really created as a source of food, because again, like, if your problem in your nation is starvation and you're running out of food, then you find ways of, even now here, people are starting to create genetic modified GMO stuff, because they're saying there's, it's easier, it's cheaper, there's no food, but it's not necessarily good for you. So that's what happened in their case, where you had these draconian beings that were running out of food and they were eating the Pleiadians. That's food. And the Pleiadians were like pleading and saying, stop eating us. We will create you a substitute food source so you would leave us alone. And that's why they went about creating these Adamites. And people will say, well, that's crazy. How can these beings eat other beings or human beings? But humans do the same thing. They eat animals and eat lesser evolved beings where they go eat chickens, cows, and, lambs and all kinds of stuff that humans eat. They don't think there's anything wrong with that. But when you show them that when you're dealing with intergalactic beings and beings from different star systems and constellations and so forth, they look at certain beings as a food source. Like a tiger or whatever doesn't care. Like, it needs to survive. So if you happen to be in the jungle walking in a place where you're not supposed to be, they're just looking at you as a food source. So some of these beings, they're the same. So yeah, they do eat flesh. And that's why throughout the Bible, you see the references to make sacrifices to these beings. Even though they make it in certain situations like it's just a test. God wanted, Isaac to be a test and all of that. No, they were saying, you read the whole of Leviticus, it's talking about, it's like a cookbook of how to cook animals, and God likes the sweet savor of the burnt carcass, sprinkling blood over the altar, and all these things. You're thinking, what kind of God wants you to do this? These are the types of extraterrestrial gods that we're talking about. So, and then beyond the Anunnaki, there are other beings, like our ancestors who were here before the Anunnaki came here. And that story is never even addressed by anyone else because it's our story and they don't know about it. So they say, like you mentioned, history, which is his story. His story based on when he came on the scene 6,000 years ago. The Adamite who's been ruling for the last 6,000 years. And history is based on his recordings and what he said, what he named everything, and then going around subjugating, colonizing, and putting other people underneath him. And now people are starting to recognize who they are and what they've done and the chaos that they've caused on the planet. And the time has come where the 6,000 years has expired. So now the renewal and they used to say our story was what? Prehistoric, prehistory. And when you say, what is that? He says, to him, it's a mystery. It's a mystery because they don't know. So when you listen to the scientists of, the Adamites, they get to a point where they don't know. They just go, we don't know how the Egyptians did this, how they built the pyramids, how they did brain surgeries, how did they do this, or other cultures that pre-exist. The Bible, the Quran, they go to the Mayans, the Zoroastrians, the Yoruba, the Hindus, the Chinese, and they're like, how did they build all these temples and do all these great things? They don't know. So they say it's a mystery. Coincidentally, a mystery is my story because I was there before his story. You see, so these mysteries now are starting to be clarified, and we're teaching and letting people know the truth. And for some people, the truth is hard to swallow because, they've been taught all their life this fictitious story of the European is, like the one that knows everything and can do everything, and everyone else is underneath them, and now the tables are completely turned. So some are able to deal with it because they're like, now it makes sense why the Africans are the most caring, loving, never colonized anyone, never came up with atomic weapons, nuclear weapons, never went to war with people unnecessarily. They defended themselves when others came, but then you look at who's the most peaceful, in tune with nature, giving the world creativity, music, dance, sports, name it, who excels. And then you look at who does the opposite on the planet. It becomes clear, even the whole thing about light and darkness, they tell you, God created the light. Well, if he created the light, he was in what? Darkness. But you're dark, they're light. So God dwells in darkness. So where does God dwell? Inside of you. And you start to look at what does light do? Light brings about chaos. you know, and these are the truths. And for some people now, it's like we're glad the truth is finally here. For others, it's uncomfortable to talk about racism, to talk about why everything black is associated with stuff that is negative. Do you know what I mean? For years, for the last 6,000 years. But everything white is associated with goodness, though, you know, angels wear white robes, you get married wearing white dresses, the good guys in the movies used to always wear white, angel fruit cake is different from the chocolate cake, and blackboard, blacklisted, black ball, you just look at all the words associated with black, it's supposed to be bad. The bad guys, you know what I mean? The devil must be black if Jesus is white. And if he's white, his mum must be white and his dad's going to be white. But the opposite to white is black. So if Jesus is God or God's son, because people say, oh, he's not God, he's the son of God. Then others say, no, he is God. Well, whichever one he is, he comes from God. Because you can't have a black father producing a white son. So it's like,
Yeah.
so then others will go, no, he's not quite black. He's caramel because he was from, do you know what I mean? The Mediterranean and all that. But okay, so what's the opposite to God then? The devil. So then you come on the planet, you look at the races, you got, they call them black people, white people, but no one is black or white. Because we're actually brown. We're not even black, as you can see. So there's a lot of distortion, misinformation, and yeah, the truth is gonna be what actually makes you free. And when you say free, free from what? Your mental bondage, the way you think, the way you act, is gonna be based on how you think. So if you don't think you are God, you're not gonna act and behave like God. You think you're the devil, you're going to behave and act like the devil, because the devil does all the wickedness on the planet. Because anytime something good happens, everyone says, thank God. But they don't say, well, who caused the bad things to happen? When you have an accident, one person dies, one person survives in that accident, say, people go, oh, thank God for the person that survived. But who caused the person that didn't survive to not survive? You see, so this is where Wu-Sabat makes things clear. And whether you like it or not, whether it's uncomfortable, truth is truth. And we're living the era of truth, and truth has to be told. You know, so yeah, if you have any other questions, I'll be more than happy to answer them.
Um, yeah, I guess on a more, yeah, I guess on a more personal level, I suppose. Um, like, I guess you like kind of went into a bit at the end there about, I guess, how you think will dictate how you act and how you live your life.
Yeah.
And I guess like I've found over the years that I can't believe in coincidences anymore. And I always find that things happen in good time. And I guess one thing I've always struggled with is the the mental, and I guess just how I think, how I see myself, and then just accordingly how I guess live my life, I suppose. And I think that's why partly why I've become so interested in, I don't know, I guess my heritage and history, human history over the years, just trying to gain an understanding of, in a way, if I can put it somewhere, looking for religion that's not religion, as in like
You
a
see
way
how
to live your life.
difficult it is for you to even express what you're really trying to say.
Yeah,
It's because that's what's happened. The chaos and the confusion and misinformation, miseducation, makes you not know who and what you are, or what, like, because religion is man-made. And that's what I'm saying. When people say religion, they're literally talking about the monotheistic religions in the last 6,000 years.
Yeah.
And that's mostly Christianity, Islam, Judaism, and the many offshoots that come from them. So it doesn't teach you the truth. It teaches you beliefs and things you should believe in, but not the truth. So to get to the bottom of it, you have to know, because you said, I'm looking for a religion that's not a religion. See, that in itself, it doesn't make sense. But I know what you mean.
Yeah.
You're looking for the truth. That's
Yeah.
what you're looking for. And people in religion don't deal with truth. They deal with beliefs. And people don't realize there's a big difference in believing something and actually knowing something. Even when you say the word belief or beliefs, it's got the word lie right in the middle of it. It sounds like, oh, but it is about the words, because even in religion, they say in the beginning was the word, right? This is, New Testament, whatever, like, but people don't go, okay, that means you need to study words. You need to know what a word means. What does the word belief mean? Why do you have to be a believer as opposed to a knower? A believer is someone that believes something, but you can believe anything you want. Doesn't mean it's true. You can believe in, like I always say, Father Christmas, Easter, Bugs Bunny, you know what I mean? You can believe in Superman, like all these stories that you believe they're real. Even like Father Christmas, they give him a place, they give him a suit, they give him a whole character, but it doesn't make it real. But there are people that have grown up their entire life and still believe that in fairy stories, fairy tales. So to know something is to have confirmation, to be able to prove it, to be able to have evidence that it actually existed, like the tablets we were talking about, like the pyramids, the writings on the walls, the pictures on the walls, the tombs that you dig up and take DNA samples and verify things, as opposed to just believe there's a place called heaven and there's a person called God or Allah or Yahweh or all these names, and there's a guy called Jesus or Muhammad or Moses. But when you go, okay, where is the evidence? All it is hearsay and things written down in books that were copied from books that were copied from books that were copied, and goes all the way back to the original stories. So to know is to basically substantiate and actually go, and that it will make sense. Because when you start to deal with science, science is not about just believe us. It's about, can we prove it? Do we have a hypothesis and we're going to investigate, carry out experiments to get to a point where we can say we know. Like we know we can make a plane that can fly through the air. We're not going to just do what they did before they did go through the science and just tie wings to your hands, go on a cliff and jump down, and then you just break your limbs because that's not scientifically, it's not a scientific process. And if you watch the evolution of how people learn to fly, people literally did this, where they would like, tie wings to their hands and jump off of a cliff, and then it evolved to, okay, learning, and then learning the science, studying birds and studying how they take flight and what makes them take flight. Saying all that to say that the scientific approach is not based on, we believe that, you know what I mean, like we're gonna build a bridge and we believe it's gonna be stable. People are gonna try and cross this bridge and either fall or drown or whatever. So you have to have scientific methods to substantiate and prove what you're saying. So when we start saying, okay, let's look at the evidence, because you can't go to court and fight a case based on I believe he did the crime. You can't. You have to come to court with the evidence, CCTV, the police statements, or whoever was there to like say, look, we can say he did the crime because here's the evidence. You can't just go, I believe he did it. Do you know what I mean? So when it comes to your soul, when it comes to your life, your everyday life and how you live, people are basing it on moral standards based on beliefs, which are not proven. The word belief means to accept things without proof. You see, so when you break down words and get into the etymology, get into what does it really mean? Because like I said, in the beginning was the word. People will quote this, but then when you start breaking down words, oh, you're too pedantic, oh, you go too deep, you're going too deep. But why not? We need to know what the word means. So when you're telling me God, I say, okay, what does the word God mean? Where did it come from? How did it originate? All of a sudden, I'm going too deep. But you want me to just accept it based on belief that you told me that. And then when you say, what's the origin of that word? You go to the language that came where it came from, and instead of it being a singular as you're trying to sell it to me in English, I discover with the evidence, oh, it's plural. So there's more than one being. Elohim is not a singular. So now all of a sudden, where you were pulling the wool over my eyes and said there's only one God, believe in this one God, I go into the language and I research that word and I find out it's more than one. So now it starts to make sense when you're saying in English, let us make man in our image and likeness. Yeah, created he them. You know what I'm saying? So it puts it in a different perspective. The story starts to make sense now. Because
Yeah.
if I'm looking at it like one person, I'm going to ask, my mind is automatically going to go, well, who's the us? Who's talking in the Bible in the very first verse? Because remember I said, look, go back to the word. What's the word Bible? What does it mean? Where does it come from? Who made it up? What language is it in? When I find that out, I find out that it doesn't mean what you're telling me it means. What does the word Genesis mean? It doesn't mean the beginning. So all of these words, as you start to break the words down one by one, and you read, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, you're going to ask, who's talking? There's a difference between being at the beginning and being in the beginning. So being inside something means that thing already exists. You see? So, and someone is talking about God. God said this, God said that. So who is the person talking in the third sense? And these are the little nuggets and little things that when you start to dissect them and open it all up, you realize words are powerful. And words are what you use to put a spell on someone. And you call it spellings. And then these words that you spell out, I'm like, what language did you spell this word from? Where did you get the alphabet to make up the word? Because people say in the beginning was the word. No, the alphabet was there first because you need to put the alphabet together to make up the word. So where's the alphabet? Where does that come from? So as you start to do these things, you start to go along. Oh, so there was language before English. So English is not the first language. Okay, what's the next? What was before English? You go back and you start to look at these books like Quran is in Arabic. New Testament is in Greek, Latin. The Old Testament is in Hebrew, but Hebrew is not the first language. So where did that come from? And you go back and you start to go, oh, what was the first language on the planet? Because if God was here first, whatever language was here first would be the first language that God used, right? You end up in ancient Egypt. You end up in different cultures, but they all go back to ancient Egypt. So, or the Sumerians, some people will say, but the Sumerians used a wedge script, which if you ask them, okay, what was the language that they spoke? They can't tell you. But we know that that was a script, different scripts of one language that was here on the planet first. Because you know that in the Bible and, they talk about in chapter 11 of, they talk about language. They talk about God said, let's go down and confine their tongue or their language. So if even in Genesis, you're going, okay, the serpent was speaking to Adam and Eve or to Eve first. So what language were they speaking? Whatever the language was, the angels knew how to speak it because the angels came and said, oh, did God tell you that you shouldn't eat of that tree? How did they not? What language were they speaking? Because Hebrew hadn't come about yet. Moses hadn't existed by that time. So these are the things that when you really do your studies and dissect it, you will get to the truth. And that's our language that we were here first. We spoke a language called Misbatia, which became known as Sabaic or Sabbatic. And then you start to see how language evolved and how people started to write with scripts, the pictograms and the hieroglyphics and the wedge shapes in Sumeria and the Chinese, all of that came from us. But we spoke first, we walked first, we were here first. This is not something that can be disputed now. DNA evidence provides that. Archaeologists have got evidence to, they've taken most of like the things in the museums in the West, even what they call the obelisks, we know as the Ben, right? Every country you go to, they've got an obelisk that they took literally physically from Egypt to bring to here. And if you start to go into what is the significance of that, it deals with the capital, because the obelisk represents a phallus, right, or a penis. Why is that significant? Because that shows power, because you give birth by way of your semen. You see, so the symbol that is used to depict that is that obelisk, or we say the Ben, and the Ben stone was on top of the obelisk. And then you start to go into the pyramids. Why did they build the pyramids? What's the purpose? And then you go into the detail of the mathematics and the science and everything. They're like, whoever did this, phenomenal. They were so intelligent that till now we can't figure it out. We can't work it out. But it's us, you see. So yeah, the truth is as they say, is sweet to the mouth and bitter to the stomach, because the more you start to get it, the more you want, because it's also a vibration, it's energy that is empowering you to know, like, you know what, you can't deny this, because your DNA, your being, even the way you've been put together, vibrates and resonates at a vibration and a frequency that when you resonate with it, you just know it's true. No one has to tell you. Like, you just know it is, as opposed to just believe me. But you're listening and watching, and you're in church and you're looking at the statues and you're in the mosque, and it's like, nah, this don't feel right. It's not vibrating with me. The resonance is off. It's not truth. And you know it's not truth because the minute you start questioning and asking too many questions, you become the problem. You become the enemy, because they have to shut you down. Whereas Wu-Sabat, we're like, no, ask us anything. We ain't got nothing to hide. That we would dissect everything to the last detail to get to the truth. And that can become uncomfortable because it means exposure to the untruths. And you can't hide behind a mask. You can't hide behind fear. God's going to burn you up. Allah's going to punish you. No, like, that's not showing intelligence, and that's not showing love. If a being is afraid of you to the point where they have to destroy you, to silence you, that's not showing a being that's able to stand his own ground and be, you know what I mean? Like, why are you afraid of my questions? You're the guy, innit? You're the one that knows everything. And I can't even get my intelligence without you, because you gave it to me. But now all of a sudden, I'm a threat to you? How? How am I a threat to you by just utilizing my brain and the things you gave me, if that's truly the case? So you realize that no, these are less intelligent beings that are not powerful. They're not able to, withstand and deal with the truth. So, and I stop sometimes because there's so much information that I could literally keep going, but I realized that I just want to address your question and then let you ask another question, and then we can keep building, because literally there's so much information that's been hidden away from people, and it's like you're not being fed. Your real essence, your being, is not being fed the truth to energize you, to feel good about yourself, to then become that which you're supposed to be. That's what Wu-Sabat will take you to, the point where you evolve into becoming that supreme being that you're supposed to be before you were maimed and, do you know what I mean? Like subjugated, oppressed, and told that what you believe, there's something wrong with you, you're gonna get punished. All of that is just like, you just give up. You just go, oh God, let me just keep quiet, stay in my lane, don't ask too much questions, don't make anyone feel uncomfortable, because you're gonna stand out as being different, because you're saying and talking and doing things that, unless someone else is on the same vibration and frequency, they're going to look at you like you're crazy. And that's the ultimate thing. People say you're crazy. And you're like, I'm crazy. But you want me to believe all this nonsense and all these things you're telling me that sounds crazy. Like, when we really start going like word for word, everything you're telling me, it doesn't make sense. You're telling me to believe something that you can't prove exists. But I'm the crazy one. You're telling me to believe in unicorns and in virgin births, and meaning like no one had sex with a woman and she just had a baby. You're telling me that this character can take mud off the ground and create a living human being. You're telling me that a person was swallowed into a well, as in Jonah, and he survived in the belly of the well for 3 days. You're telling me that someone, this God's son, but was nailed on a cross and beaten and spat on and by mere men, the Romans and the Pharisees and all of that, that they're able to do this to God's son, and God is just there chilling. Let me let him get dragged and beaten, and so he can prove that your sins are forgiven and you can now be saved. But he couldn't save himself, and sins are still in the world till today. So what did he do? And when you say, well, he might as well not have come, people in religion are going to look at you like you're crazy. Like, you have to believe. You have to believe that he came and he died for your sins. And now it means you're going to heaven. Like, who's gone to heaven and come back and told us they've been to heaven and provided any evidence? No evidence. But I'm just supposed to believe it. Oh, if you're bad, you're going to go to hell. Okay, who's gone to hell and come back? Where is hell? Oh, it's down there in the center of the earth, right? They put on movies like Journey to the Center of the Earth. You go through the North Pole to the South Pole and come out, no one's seen hell. But it's supposed to exist, and I'm supposed to believe that. So all these lies that you've been told for years, you're supposed to believe. He can walk on water, he can do this, he can do that, but God can't get rid of the devil till this day. And he can't get rid of all the wars, the sins, the diseases, just all the chaos on the planet. He can't get rid of that. But he can put me in hell. He's very good at that. The minute you cross over, yeah, he knows that to punish you. But he can't do nothing for you whilst you're alive. You're only going to wait till you die to go to this place called heaven to get salvation. Okay, what do I get when I go to heaven? What do they tell you? What do you get when you go to heaven?
I don't know, to be honest with you.
Gardens and streams and waterfalls, and that's it. Honey and milk. I'm like, I can get milk in Sainsbury's. I can literally go to Tesco's and get honey and get milk. So you're going to die to go to heaven to get milk and honey. And in the Quran, they start telling you you're going to get virgins and maidens and women, basically. You can get women here on the earth. So all these things you're going to live. That's another one. You're going to live forever. I'm living forever anyway, because energy can't be destroyed. So what is it that I'm going to get by going to heaven? In fact, when you start to break it down, and analyze it, it makes no sense because everyone is in heaven is supposedly going to live forever. But you ask, well, how old is everyone in heaven? Because to live forever means you're not going to age. So if I died on the planet Earth at the age of 20 and I'm going to live forever, so am I going to remain 20 years old forever? And if that's the case, that means somebody who died at 90 is going to remain 90 forever. And the baby that died at 6 months old is going to be a baby forever. So if you're going to live forever, you're not going to age. But they're going to say, oh, not in the physical body. So how are you going to recognize your family and everyone that you're supposed to be going back to be in union and be with? And what do you do in heaven? If you're just a spirit, then there's no need for curly gates. There's no need for angels wearing white robes because what are the robes made from? Are they cotton? Are they silk? Are they can't be spiritual clothes because if you don't have a body, you don't need any clothes, right? So it sounds silly, but when you start to think, if they wear clothes, someone's a tailor. Someone has to make the clothes. Someone, if it's cotton, someone has to pick the cotton to make the fabric to make the clothes. If God is sitting down, he's got to have a bottom. He's got to have a chair to sit on. And it just doesn't make sense. Like, if everyone is trying to find their loved ones, there's chaos because everyone's running around trying to find. Do you go to work? Where do you live? Do you have a house? Do you have a car? These are the questions that people just go, they just go to church and go to the mosque and hear sermons and go home and just have a fictional kind of like, oh, this was going to happen when I die. But they don't really know and they don't ask questions. They don't probe to go, does this make sense? And when you do, you know, I mean, we can tell you the actual facts, the truth about what we're talking about, but that's you asking questions in terms of we tell you the story, the lies of what they tell you, and then we tell you the actual facts and the actual truth of what they're trying to tell you, you see, and it's a completely different thing. So just to touch on that, you know, you have actual constellations and places and beings that live in a different world to what we know, different planets, different star systems, and they live like how we live here, but they're just advanced and have technology on a different level because they can travel intergalactically, they can travel from planet to planet. We're now trying to do that. We're trying to learn how to go to Mars. We're trying to learn how to, you know what I mean, go beyond this planet because we're evolving. But the biblical accounts of what heaven is not that. The word heaven actually comes from the word haven, which is a docking station in space on a space station. But people would not look into the word and research it and be like, you know, the places they're talking about, Orion, Sirius, these are star constellations that you can find in Job 9:9, Amos 5:8, Book of Revelations talks about crafts, Crystal City, which is a planet-sized ship, Nibiru. Daniel talks about his visions. We can go on and on showing you all the stories that you're talking about in the Bible are of different beings and entities that come here, come on crafts, and there's a level where you're evolving to, where you're a being that, going to what you were saying about the essence, you're an etheric being, all right, where your energy and depending on the level of your vibration, you merge back with that energy source. You see, so like all water, for example, on the planet is water, and air is air, but they're different, densities or vibrations, and you become that as you shed your physical. The physical goes back to the earth, the dust, your soul, your spirit, your mental. You have other parts of you that are vibrating on a different density, and you're connected to those beings, and those entities are living, but they live under different rules than you living in this world in the physical. You see what I mean? So you're governed by the environment that you're in. So if you found yourself in an environment like, let's say, fire, you will just merge and become fire. If you're in water, you become water. But you're actually made up of all these things at different variations, you see. But you have to learn how to tap into those aspects of you and how to live in that realm based on the rules of that realm, based on the form you are in once you're in that realm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
And there are different realms that go all the way to what we call nine realms, to nine ether, to these supreme beings that have been misinterpreted as, you know, gods and angels and so forth. So depending on you and your growth and evolution in terms of how much knowledge you have, how much information you have, you start to evolve to becoming more and more of who you're really supposed to be. That's what Wu-Sabat said to do, to teach you that. And it's not no dipping in water and yeah, you're baptized or you've taken your shahada and you're born again and that's it. You've got to work. You've got to stop doing things that are affecting your physical body in terms of your diet, your mental, what you think about, what practices you do to help you evolve as a spiritual being, as a soul, as you know what I mean, as your mind. And you mentioned that, look, the mind, we have this scroll called the mind, is one of the recommendations that we say to get your mind straight, to put all of these lies and false information into place. Read the mind so you know what is the mind. Do you know what I mean? Because people have this illusion that the mind is in their head. It's not. You're tapping into the mental reservoir and you're pulling from that mental reservoir to you because you have a connection with it. And depending on your level of connection, you can access more information than someone else who's vibrating on a low vibration. And people say, oh, this magical library called the Akasha or the Akashic Records, where all information of anything you want to know is stored. Yeah, we know that it's called a mental reservoir, but there's layers. It's like a library, but you know what I'm saying? Like you go to a library, you have science fiction and different subjects of different levels. You've got quantum physics over there, you've got different levels. Someone might only be interested in learning how to cook. So there's a cookbook section, do you know what I mean? But someone might be interested in learning about metaphysics and the higher sciences, and there's a section for that. So yeah, our ancestors, they reside and they're much, much more advanced and intelligent than what people reduce them down to be as in angels. But the thing is, there are rules to these different realms and you can't interfere or get involved in certain aspects because that's not your concern. You know what I mean? If you're like they give you the movies Guardians of the Galaxy, they're beings that guard the galaxies to make sure that there's order and deal with conflict resolution on that level. Just like here, you've got sovereign countries, they're meant to be able to be autonomous and rule themselves, like, you know, Russia, Ukraine, and Israel, but they have conflicts. And then you have the United Nations, which is like, okay, we deal with it on a, you know what I mean, on a worldly, so you have people that will have to deal with the countries if they're doing things that, like they're saying, you know what I mean, based on the rules of war, you can't hurt civilians or do certain things. If you're doing that, someone has to step in. But a lot of the times, you know, they don't. They just allow it to keep going because everyone has a motive or an interest in why they want the war or why they don't want the war. And this goes all the way back to what I was saying with the conflicts of the gods. Like, it's crazy right now on the planet. And our ancestors are saying, look, it's our time. It's a renewal of our story, our history, our way of life, which is Wu-Sabat. If you don't change your course and get back your culture and your way of life, and you remain in the Adamites' world with their chaos and that's going. Whether people accept it or not, that is on the decline, is falling. Babylon the Great is fallen, is fallen. Come out of her, my people. These are like quotes from the Bible for those who don't know, Revelation 18:2. Yeah, so there is a reckoning right now, and every person has to, if they're even on that level, because some people are not even conscious of what's going on around them to the point where they even know, feel. If people really knew what's coming and what is taking place, yeah, it's actually somewhat frightening. But we're not here to preach doom and gloom, because there's also a positive outcome. That's why it's said that it's the great and dreadful day of the Lord. So it's great for some people and it's dreadful for others. Like, these changes are going to take place, and you either get with it, or you don't, and you fade out with the change. You know. Do you have any more questions, or yeah?
A couple more actually.
Okay.
It's kind of two different moments in my life where I've kind of felt a bit crazy, I guess. Um, there was one where, like, I like to, not often, but I've always liked writing and writing stories and poetry and things like that. And there was probably when I was about 21. This was kind of when I was around the time where this whole journey I've had started, I guess. And there was something I wrote, and I'll never forget it. It was such a weird feeling, and like normally it takes me a little bit, but this I finished it in literally 10 minutes, and the way it felt at the time, it was literally like I was drawing from something else, if that makes sense. And there was another time where I actually went to see a Reiki healer once. Like, I had an accident when I was 22 years old, and I almost died. And when I went to see the Reiki healer, she asked me if I had any family members that had passed, and I was like, yeah, my grandma, but that was at the time it would have been about 10 years ago maybe. And she said that she was protecting you that night. And there was a part of me that believes it, but then there's a massive part of me that thinks it's crazy. But then I've also had a brush with death, and I understand, or have a slight understanding of what it feels like. And like, before I woke up in the hospital, I just remember being in this like white space, this white void, and I was just walking and walking. And I guess I've never, I've searched for an answer for it, and could never find one.
Okay.
But it's always made me feel crazy, like it's not believable. But at the same time,
Yeah.
it's like I also inherently know that there's something much greater than me that is out there and that is in control. But it feels strange to admit it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I get you. This is where I was saying that religion makes you doubt yourself and doubt these things that you experience, which are undeniable to you, right? Many people have all kinds of experiences, and they doubt themselves because, like I said, you've been cut off of who you really are and your real being. Like I touched on the different essence that make you up. And so when people are having these experiences that they've been taught to feel like, it's not real, or they doubt themselves. So that's not uncommon what you're saying. But you had an experience, but you will convince yourself to not believe it or accept it. Yes, there is the element of people can be delusional, or, they can have, let's say, vices, like drugs, magic mushrooms, alcohol, or whatever substance that can also give these hallucinations and stuff like that, which slightly separate. We'll come back to that in a minute. But when you said you wrote something, what we're trying to explain is that you have a higher being, yeah? You have a counterpart, a spiritual being, and other beings that exist outside of you, like your ancestors, that have a play in your life, because some of them, we say they're personalities that manifest in you or through you. And so they can help you, or your higher self can be the one passing information to you to write or whatever. And people call this inspiration or whatever. So it's possible that when you're writing, it's not you, the physical person, writing, but one of those personalities or ancestors or your higher self that is doing it. Do you understand? And then you have your ancestors who you have what we call agreeable or and disagreeable. People term that good and bad, or positive and negative, but it's not really good and bad, because it's religion that makes things like, oh, this is good, this is bad, to deal with your moral compass. But agreeable in the sense where you have ancestors who have evolved and have gone past what you're going through now, and have crossed over or translate or transmuted into these other realms I was talking about. And the agreeable ones are there to guide you, to help you along, so that when you reach that point of transitioning, they're there to help you. It's like being born in a new world, like how you were born into this world. In this world, when you're born, you may be at a hospital and you have your parents there with, and maybe some other family members waiting to receive you. And if everything goes well and you're healthy and so forth, you come out, you're a healthy baby and so forth, right? If something goes wrong, like let's say your mother was a drug addict or doing something that has an impact on your being, or you're stillborn, or you're born, as they say, premature, meaning you haven't fully developed, then they have to take, matters into, okay, you might be put into an incubator, or like something that's going to help you to continue to develop to the point where you can now carry on. In the spiritual world, it's the same, where you can be born prematurely, meaning you haven't developed your spiritual being. You haven't developed the other essence of you that are being born into that new world. So this is why Wu-Sabat is here, with the knowledge and the information and the practices are to help you strengthen and prepare for your birth into that new world. And of course, that's a new existence with rules that govern that realm, and so on and so forth. So when you're saying about the healer telling you stuff, there are people that have gifts. There are people that can see what people call auras, or like look at you and tell you about, like your spiritual being or your other essences, right? So none of these things are things we don't teach about in Wu-Sabat. Like the master teacher is someone who is a master of what people call the spiritual realm, as well as the physical realm. And this is where, when you look at someone who's graduated or like has knowledge of an area, they might get a degree. You say a circle is completion, or someone that has managed to like learn and graduated from the circumference of information. So the circle represents completion. And then you have to say, okay, completion in the physical realm. But there's also a spiritual realm, for a lack of a better word. So there's another circle of information that you have to master, and that will be termed the unseen world. But you have a circle is 360 degrees, yeah. And if you were to split this circle or cut it like a cake into each degree, you will find out that there are many degrees you need to master, not just going to university and getting 1 degree out of 360 degrees. So a spiritual master, like the master teacher, is somebody that has mastered both sides. So 360 of the physical, the seen world, and 360 of the spiritual or the unseen world together gives you 720 degrees of a master of both worlds. When you're like that, then you help other people to also master the physical and master the spiritual. And you add 7 + 2 + 0, you get 9, which is 9 ether. But it's showing you that 9 is like completion, and then you start all over again. So every time you think you've mastered something, there's more to learn, and there's more to learn. So you go to 1 to 9, then from 10 you're starting 1 again to 19, and then you're starting again where you keep going, and there's a lot of information or degrees of information to learn. But you can only learn from someone who has mastered both sides. And that's why he's here. He's been sent here as a spiritual master, a guide, and someone who is of those higher degree beings to come and teach you how to get there and do that. So these things like speaking to our ancestors, speaking to other entities or beings in different realms, even traveling there in terms of what people might term astral projection or remote viewing. All these things are very real. This is our sciences, and we are now being taught how to do these things again. So it's just when you're not familiar with it, when you don't have anyone to go to explain it, other people just say you're crazy. So the word crazy is just something that sometimes people just don't understand or get it. So they will just they make themselves feel better by saying you're crazy, as opposed to like, okay, are there people out there that deal with metaphysics and deal with, life beyond the physical? There are people that have had near-death experiences, people that have been in an operating table and they've come out of their body and watching themselves being operated on, and then tell you later on. There are many experiences that people have, things they've seen in different dimensions or crafts, and all of this is put into the realm of you're crazy, because someone who's never experienced that or don't know about these things, they have no other explanation for it. So it's easy to just go, you're crazy, because they don't know. But when you start to look at it from a global perspective, and you will find people in all walks of life, laymen, professionals, different races, different parts of the world that have all experienced the same things. So why is it that you're crazy if millions of people around the planet are experiencing and going through the same things? Another one is seeing extraterrestrials. There are people that have been abducted that when they're put into what do they call it when you're in hospital and they're going to operate on you, they give you something to put you to sleep. What's the term? I can't remember. Is it
Anesthesia.
That's it, right? And there are people that it doesn't work on them. So these extraterrestrials abduct them, put them on the table, start cutting them up, but they still can see and feel and know what's happening. So when they come back, they go through like hypnotic regression, which is, a method that is used to try and recall things from your subconscious or things that you've recorded and seen. And people would draw the same beings, describe the exact same thing that they experienced, but these people are in different parts of the world and never ever came across each other. So they're anomalies that happen with people. There's a really good movie, I can't remember the name of it, but it was on here on the planet, and it was someone was trying to. There was a plot from a doctor and a person to try and kill this person so they can take their inheritance or something like that. But in the movie, this person, the anesthetic didn't work, so they could hear and see what was going on. But what happened is that can't recall the name of the movie, but what happened is that I can't remember the exact plot, but what happened is that they did the operation, but somehow the person was, yeah, it didn't work on them, so they knew, and then they had to go and prove that yeah, I can't remember the exact, but basically I'm saying that to say that there are people who you know, they didn't die, or they were in a situation where they were able to see everything, and then they eventually they worked out, and you know what I mean, the whole thing got exposed. But yeah, so I'm saying it's no coincidence, because when you say coincidence, the word co means two. If something happens twice, that's co, because a co-pilot is two people, right? But if it's happening all around the world and so many different people are saying the same thing, then it's no longer a coincidence. It actually becomes, you know, fact. And yeah, so don't think you're crazy. Wu-Sabat will help you, because we have a book called The Spiritual You After the Physical You Dies. Because when I say the master teacher is a master of the unseen world, or what people call the spiritual world, he has written extensively to teach us about that world too. So when you experience certain things or do certain things, you're not going to be like, I'm crazy. Because, you know, what does it mean to be crazy, really? I mean, you can even break that down to what type of mental health issue does the person have, if they have any at all. And people say I'm crazy because I hear voices, but like everybody hears voices, but you're not made to think you hear voices, but you hear a voice in your head every day because you have a receiver, like a radio. You can pick up radio waves, you can pick up thoughts, so you hear voices in your head. Some of these voices are your ancestors that I mentioned, that are speaking through you, and or with you, that give you guidance from the other realms. Because remember, I said the mental realm is a realm that beings that are pure mental beings reside and communicate from. So hearing voices in your head is not, it's not crazy, but what they're saying is there are some people that have the ability to be like telepathic, or have certain powers where they don't know how to control. So they hear lots of voices at the same time, or too much, and they're not the ones in control. So voices telling them conflicting things, do this, do that. And you hear people that are kind of like bipolar, in a sense, where one minute they're doing one thing and then the next minute they're doing the opposite thing. So you do have these higher powers like telepathy, you know, clairvoyance, intuition, psychometry. These are the higher senses. And some beings start to tap into that. If they don't know how to control it, can come across like there's something wrong with you. You've got mental health issues because you're hearing voices. And some people go as far as saying, the voice told me to go and do this and do that. Then you have entities that are not agreeable, that utilize your being to do things for them to feed off of the energy of what you do. You see, so it's quite a complex subject, but we do have many scrolls. Like I said, the mind, the spiritual you after the physical you dies, soul, spirit, 30 spirits. These are all scrolls that you know, we call them partaraks, that you read and you go, ah, that's what's happening to me. Ah, and then you start to gain more knowledge to know what to do when you're in these situations, you know. So yeah, so thanks for your questions.
Yeah,
Your
yeah.
journey is still ahead. You got to keep studying, keep learning, come to our classes, keep asking us questions until like it's crystal clear in your mind, and then you start to live Wu-Sabat as your culture, and there's nothing more powerful on the planet right now. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
All right.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Appreciate, love you.